Hey everybody, it's Chris with Thunderbird Drone Festival. I have my friend Jacob here from AirVūz, and you guys probably know him as Nurk, Paul Nurkkala. He's the 2018 World Champion of the DRL Drone Racing League, and we're excited you guys are here tonight with us, and we're going to talk about FPV drones. So, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
So I'm going to approach our discussion tonight just as a guy who's fairly new to FPV myself. I've seen a lot of it. I'm super impressed by it, but realistically, I'm terrible at it. I just got my first tiny whoop drone, and all I can do is basically crash the thing. So I'm hoping to get better. So anyway, let's just start with the question: what is FPV for a person who's never heard of FPV drones? Just give us a little bit about what it is.
Yeah, so FPV the acronym is first person view, right? So you're operating the aircraft, and it doesn't even have to be an aircraft, right? It could be literally anything from the first person perspective, right? So you see what that craft sees as if you're on board, right? So if it's a drone, you're flying the drone as if you're sitting like in the cockpit with, controls there, or if it's even in like an RC car, you're sitting in the driver's seat, like kind of pretending that you're on the machine. And to accomplish FPV, you wear either goggles on your face where you kind of blind all of your other vision and you just see what the drone sees, or you can use a screen. And the process of augmenting your normal sensory experience with technology is kind of where FPV shines.
Great. How did it get started? Do you know the history behind it?
Yeah, I don't know, like I don't know if I can go all the way back in history, but the certain things that I could kind of touch on are especially drones and RC. Well, let's say RC aircraft have been around for a long time, right? Way back into the, I want to say 60s, maybe 70s. There've been RC remote control planes with FM transmitters and stuff, and with the advent of security systems, actual like old school security systems that you'd have at like a warehouse, they kind of basically started gutting those things and slapping them onto aircraft, whether that be a plane or a drone. And eventually the market caught on and started developing like bespoke products for doing FPV. And then kind of technology started to advance a little bit, and then we get into newer technologies for that. But roughly it was guys that are excited about technology slapping two different things that are from two different industries together and just hoping it works.
And that's kind of still like, even in the last few years, that's kind of still how it's evolved, right? With like just putting a GoPro on something or different things like that, right?
100%. I think the FPV culture has been a question of like, we probably shouldn't do this, so let's do it anyway and see what happens. So so initially it was, let's take a security camera and fly a drone from it. And then it was, I want to get better looking video, so let's put a GoPro on it. And, now it's really popular to fly like a cinema camera on there. So like, let's just take a $10,000 camera, slap it on this drone that is operated by a $20 flight controller, and just hope it works. It's like, I think there's a progression of people trying new and exciting things maybe quicker than the technology is there. But I think that's the case for everything in the world, right? You look at rocketry failures and then success, and how all that stuff comes together, or even cars and vehicles, like stuff like that. So yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So these guys, like with the security camera things, they're probably watching it on a monitor when they first start doing that, before we start bringing in the goggles into play.
Definitely. Initially it was almost certainly off of like a TV or some sort of like, maybe even like a CRT monitor. I would imagine that it was pretty soon that people started to kind of like make like, box goggles where they like, take some duct tape, some cardboard together and tape the screen to the back of it. And then eventually products like Sky Zone, Fat Shark, Aomway came out and developed specific for the industry FPV goggles.
Awesome. So how long have you been flying?
I started flying drones at Christmas of 2014. So it's currently 2021, so just shy of 7 years. Yeah.
And so how'd you get into that? Like what was the kind of starting factor for you to
Yeah,
find that?
so at that Christmas of 2014, my in-laws got me a stocking stuffer toy drone for Christmas, right? It was just like, hey, we saw this, we thought you might have fun with it. Here, enjoy. And I spent basically the rest of Christmas trip, because it's Christmas with the in-laws, like, you gotta find something to do. And I basically just practiced flying that thing. Can I land it on this drum, or can I fly it through that hoop, or how close to the Christmas tree can I get without getting stuck in or breaking an ornament or something like that. And through that process, broke that drone. And when I broke the drone, I was like, hey, I'm kind of an engineer. I was a programmer at the time, and I figured I should be able to figure out how to fix this. So I went online, I got a YouTube university education in drone repair, and along the process of figuring that out, stumbled across drone racing. It was a video of these guys in France flying through the woods with GoPros and LEDs, and it was so Star Wars, and it's so eye catching to me that I was like, I remember sitting at work, pretending to work, and said, I have to do that. And so, shortly after that, bought my first kit, built my first drone, and March 16th of 2015, I like flew my drone in my garage, this garage actually, for the very first time, and it's all been it's all taken off from there.
Mhm. Awesome, awesome. Well, I'm just so impressed. Like, I've been working with these guys from Oklahoma, Texas, Wichita, Tulsa, that have been helping me kind of set up our FPV. We're going to do tiny whoop races here in Woodward this weekend,
Awesome.
and I'm just so impressed by you said you're a programmer or whatever. Just that aspect of those guys just know all this stuff about the frequencies and binding your drone and repairing the drone and all that stuff. It's just it's awesome to me. I remember I think it was a few years ago, maybe we talked online, and I had asked you about when you first get into FPV, what's the first thing you should do? And you told me to learn how to build the drone.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And so is that kind of still your motto for people that ask you, how do I get into it?
I have so the question is, how do you get into FPV? And the way that I told you probably 2 or 3 years ago was learn how to build your drone. And I still stand by that, but I've kind of alternated that uh answer to add the caveat, if you have the gumption, right? Not everybody wants to learn how to build their own drone, and there's kind of finally starting to be products out there that make it somewhat easy to get into it without breaking the bank. But I still recommend for anyone that can or has the desire to learn how to build it, because you're going to break it, right? These things fly 80 miles an hour, and when you hit anything at 80 miles an hour, no matter how durable it is, it's going to break. And if you know how to build it, you know how to fix it. So I definitely still recommend learning how to build your drone. It's a lot of people have built their own computer, for example. It's no more complicated than that. You just have to add in the step of soldering, which is really not as scary as it sounds. That being said, the best way I would say here in 2021 is to get a simulator. So you can buy a computer game, and some of them are free for Mac, PC, that will run on pretty much any computer, and plug in the actual drone controller or an Xbox controller and actually practice flying. And so what that means is that you can crash that as many times as you want, but the only expense is going to be uh the $10 or whatever you paid for a game. So that, I would say, is probably the best place to start. Then I think where you're at with your tiny whoop, that you brought up at the beginning, is a great place to go from there, to kind of get to start feeling out, because when you're simulating something, there's air and wind and different kind of dynamics that change the way you fly, and then upgrade then from into faster, scarier, potentially hurt someone or something drones from there.
Sure. Well, and back to the learning to kind of do maintenance on your drone. I imagine that's a practical thing too, for if you're at a race and something goes wrong, you can repair it right there. If you're on a film shoot, you can kind of within reason make those repairs, right? And makes it easier for you to kind of do your job that you're there to do.
100%. I definitely plan for accidents to happen, right? I almost, and I'll go more from the like on set sort of perspective, is like when I work with a director or a DP, I kind of almost tell them, and sometimes I do actually tell them, consider me more part of the stunt team, right? There's a certain level of like risk to reward, right? And I'm always willing to risk it more and more, but we're more likely to cause a crash or break some equipment or something like that. So like you don't want to find that balance point, and I'll come with equipment to go all the way to 100%, and where you get into send it mode within safety boundaries and all of that stuff. But I'll show up with 5 drones and parts to fix 2 or 3 of them in the hotel later if need be. But that being said, I always plan for the worst case scenario. Absolutely.
Sure. Awesome.
And so to follow up and answer your question, being able to build your own drone allows me to save a lot of money when I build all 5 of them. And then when I break them, I can still fix them, put them back together, and make sure that I'm always ready. But yeah.
Absolutely. Cool. So let's talk about just cinematic FPV a little bit. So I think the first cinematic FPV video I ever saw was Muscle Beach.
Yep.
And that was, I was in the, I believe it was the 2018 or 19 LA Drone Film Festival. They played that one. It won the best of show that year. And then I think the next one I saw was your Flight of the Year, where you're flying through the train.
Yeah.
That was a big hit in New York City. I remember everybody just laughing at that as you're kind of maneuvering through there. So that was cool. So let's just talk about the history of that a little bit, as far as kind of how that got started for cinematic purposes and kind of how that's evolved. So
yeah, the concept of using FPV for cinematic purposes, I think, has always been something that a lot of people wanted to do, but the taste wasn't there for it, right? Like there's a very specific style, a very specific look that you get out of FPV. And so what needed to happen, back in the day, because these machines were capable of getting shots like this, we needed the process, the taste, the want for it to develop. And we're starting to see it a lot, right? Almost every car commercial these days has an FPV shot. A lot of feature films now are starting to have them. Having conversations with some upcoming feature films, we're talking about doing like oneers and stuff like that, using FPV to kind of pull and tie all of that together. To rewind all the way back to, I believe, 2013 was kind of one of the biggest first like FPV drone shots. Was Robert McIntosh, who was the creator of Real Steady, who made the Muscle Up video, did a collaboration with Ty Evans, who's a skateboard video director, and I'm sorry if that's not the right way to say, is it a skate film, something like that. But anyway, he they did a shot with the sketchiest like DJI flywheel with like a Panasonic GH5 or something strapped to it, and he programmed Real Steady to make the shot work and created this beautiful oneer, using what technology was available at the time. And at that moment, people are like, oh my gosh, this is insane what this guy can do with the drone. Because at that point, you didn't even have like the DJI Phantom 1, like the original one didn't even exist yet, right? This is before any of that. So like getting a drone shot that was decent, let alone getting a drone shot where he's flying under something, over things, through like there's like a fence gap that he hits. It's just like, oh my gosh, like, is this even possible? So Robert, I think saw the potential, saw what it how it blew up online, and said, okay, let's make a product out of this. Came up with Real Steady, which I think has been one of the biggest bumps that FPV has gotten over the last 5-10 years in terms of its acceptance into cinema and feature films, which it's ironic that we're all moving away from that now towards cine lifters. But so he created Real Steady, and then it started to become more and more popular. The Muscle Up was originally like just shot to demonstrate the capability of Real Steady, because if you watch the footage side by side of like the original shot versus what it looks like when it comes to Real Steady, it's just like, oh my gosh, like it can do that. and that just kind of continued to build up the opportunity for people to worry less and less about the technology of how to get a shot, and instead focus in on what's the art of creating an awesome moment, to create things like what's popular right now is the bowling alley video, or to think about different like single take kinds of things, or using it in commercial applications, stuff like that.
Absolutely. Jacob, you have anything to add there?
No, I mean, it's an evolution, that's for sure. And Real Steady, he hit it right on top of the head. I mean, Real Steady did change the game. I don't know if cinematic FPV would be where it's at if not for Real Steady, because I don't think there would be many directors or anybody in the film industry that would have taken that chance if not seeing how steady a camera like that can be. We're seeing cinelifters now, like Nurk mentioned, but who knows if that would have even been a thing if Robert McIntosh hadn't created that and the Real Steady hadn't come around, and we weren't seeing flights even atop of mountains, or like Nurk said, the bowling alley videos, or through restaurants. When you see that raw footage, it's not what you want in a film. So
Yeah.
I think we're lucky. I mean, we're lucky a product like that has come around or came along, and I think as somebody that's in this industry, that's just the beginning of what's to come in cinematic FPV. We're at the forefront of something which is really cool to think about in the history of history. We're right at the beginning of it.
Yeah. Well, it's really cool to think, like, I'm thinking back, I don't even consider myself just this, fantastic drone pilot or anything. I haven't done a ton, but like, when I first shot my, my first film, Cardboard Cadet, with the Phantom 4, just cheap stuff laying around my house, it almost seemed like, drones were just kind of at the beginning of the cinematic, being accepted, I guess, in the film world. And it just seems like it's just like a quick ramp up the last, few years, especially with the FPV stuff and the ability to carry those heavy cameras and all that. It's really cool to see. Really neat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think just going off of that a little bit, I mean, you talk about how the Phantoms and the Inspires and all of that we're seeing more and more, and it's cool being in this industry when you're watching Netflix or something and you can tell what's a helicopter shot compared to a drone shot now. And now we're even seeing that more with FPV. There's shots that used to totally be CGI, which is more up your alley, Chris, but
Sure.
or VFX or VX, stuff like that, where you can totally tell they just got to fly through a jungle with an FPV drone, which it's super cool to see that implemented.
Absolutely. What do you guys think's coming next? Any guesses?
The safe answer is smaller, lighter cameras that can do what essentially the Komodo can do.
Yeah.
That make it so we don't have to have these monstrous drones. So I think we're going to come back towards like the 5-inch freestyle drone, which I think is the best bang for buck in terms of performance to flight duration, everything. In terms of cinematic FPV anyway. And I think it'll become I hope it will become a standard, right? It's like everything has FPV pulled into it in some way or another, right? It's such a dynamic shot that there's something, but it could also be a fad. And I fear that very much because I've kind of committed a little bit to FPV here. So I'm hoping it sticks around for a while, but I think it will. So
yeah. I think there are just shots that you need it for now. We're seeing it more and more. If you want a real life shot, it's going to take an FPV drone, and I think that he was knocked it right on the head with the smaller camera, smaller drone. I think we're seeing the Squirt is what, a 3-inch Nurk right now. I think if you see that more and more, and there are drones out built that are 5-inch that have those ducts and everything. But I think whenever you're around $1 million celebrity talent, that's probably, and Nurk has been around that before on movie sets. So I think that's probably the biggest fear. And I think as you can make a show, you have a safer and safer drone, you're gonna get more yeses, even if you're a pilot like Nurk. But if I went to a spot when they knew his background and they knew I had the safer drone, I mean, it's probably going to be a toss up.
Sure. Yeah.
And I have a pretty good sense of what's next in the shorter term. I can't talk about it yet. So stay tuned to the channel, Nurk.tv, for more information.
And there's the plug. Only 14 minutes and 42 seconds in.
That's awesome. So, okay, so switching gears a little bit, like we have, I think about close to 15 racers signed up for our races this weekend.
Awesome.
Let's just talk about the racing community a little bit. I don't know very much about that at all. So, you know, what does that all involve? Is, you know, does it have kind of its set of rules like any other sport or anything like that? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so drone racing, as opposed to, you know, freestyle where you're just kind of about having fun, or cinematic where you're trying to get like a very specific shot, is all about speed. It's all about getting around a course as fast as possible. And there's a bunch of different leagues, a bunch of different series, but inevitably what it comes down to is, you know, everybody takes off at the same time, and you try to get to through the end of, you know, a number of laps first. And there's, you know, a whole bunch of different ways to set it up, to do qualifying, all that kind of stuff. But essentially you build an obstacle course for the drones that you have to fly through as fast as possible and do it faster than everybody else without crashing. Now, I would argue that crashing is probably one of the biggest parts. I feel like in races that I've been to in recent time, it's still like a 40 or 50% attrition rate, right? It's a lot of people try to go fast to catch up, or they are going too fast out front and crash, like that sort of thing. So, you know, sometimes it's just about finishing, and then, you know, then the next part is about finishing first. And that's the people that can be consistent and fast are the ones that are always separating themselves from the rest.
I think that's the biggest thing I noticed from afar as well. You know, we're lucky enough at AirVūz to see a lot of the races around the world uploaded to AirVūz. But also we've got to meet pilots like Nurk and Chris Spangler, Fluxy, who's close nearby us, and Gab and Johnny FPV, and these guys. And the biggest thing I've noticed, I mean, and maybe it's coming from a sports media background, and I watch a whole bunch of other sports as well, but each pilot is their own. They each have something way better than the other person, you know, and it's crazy to see, like, their own trait almost. If you look at it, I can break it down easy. Like Gabriel Coker, is that how you say his last name? For Gabriel Coker? I've always just known him as Gab.
Fuck yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he's from Switzerland and Canada, so it's something cool. But he is probably the most technical, laid-back pilot I've ever seen in my life, and it shows every single year, no matter what. What did he start, year 2, I think, with DRL?
He was in season 1.
Was he? Yeah, so he's been there since the beginning, and he's constantly in the top 3 almost every year. But then there's guys like Vanover, who is the reigning champ of the last full season, that is speed. He's speed, man, you know? And then there's guys like Nurk, who he said it, you can find that middle ground to bring it both together, and that's why he won in 2018.
I also play a lot of head games.
Yeah, that is true. And the gamesmanship in Drone Racing League is phenomenal. And I think that's just like the NBA or the NFL, that the smack talk between these guys is hilarious. And DRL prides itself on calling it a show. And it's, oh man, like after seeing it live one time, it's definitely a show. So I'll do a little plug right now. If you haven't ever watched DRL, you know, stay tuned for this upcoming season. It's on NBC Sports again. I think it is, yeah. So catch some of that, or just past seasons. There's a race that comes to mind of you and Fluxy, and it got a little heated, and I love seeing that. And it was one of those photo finishes like in NASCAR or in horse racing, and in this one, unfortunately, Nurk did not come out on top, but it was one of the most exhilarating things, no matter if you're a drone pilot or not. I was with a bunch of family watching it that night, and they have no clue about drone racing, and they were screaming at the TV, and it was so cool. But I think that's one of the coolest things too. And Nurk, maybe you want to tell for the people that know you and that know the FPV life and drone racing and stuff like that, and honestly, Alex Vanover, I think there's a cool story when it comes to gamesmanship that I think the listeners here should listen to as well.
Yeah, so in the Drone Racing League, we have the cockpit, and all 6 of us sit side by side, and we then put our goggles on and grab our controllers and fly the course. And in a particular event, I was tied with Vanover for season stand. Actually, he was a little bit ahead of me for season standings. We had both won 1 race, and we are going into the 3rd race. So I'm like, what am I going to do to kind of get a leg up on him? And a few months prior, we had gone to an event, and we were just kind of hanging out that night. Like there was like a red carpet sort of situation. There was like a step and repeat, like like where you take pictures in front of and stuff like that. And I just happened to have taken a photo with Alex Vanover's mother. And so that morning, the morning of the big race, this 3rd race where, Alex and I are kind of facing off, we were 1-1. I'm currently the reigning champion. He's kind of the guy that's challenging for it. I wake up from my hotel room at like 4 p.m. because we're shooting overnight, and walk across the street to a FedEx or Kinko's or whatever, and I go into the store. I send them, hey, I've got this photo. Can you print it for me? And they print out the photo in a 5x7. I go and buy a frame from the store. So we're like $10 committed on this. And I've got this lovely photo of me hanging out with Alex Vanover's mom at this event. So fast forward, we get to the event, we go through all of our warm-ups and practice and all this stuff, and we were sitting down for our first round of semifinals, so like the very first round that actually matters. And I had snuck it in my back pocket. My pockets were just big enough to hold this 5x7 frame. And Alex and I was sitting next to Alex, and Alex is trying to talk to me, trying to get in my head, just going on like, oh, I feel so slow tonight, like blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I hear you. And I gotta slowly pull this photo out and just set it on my little stand in front of me. And, I just gotta wait for him to he's still talking. He's like, I was going so slow through this turn. And he looks down, he's like, what is that? And I'm just like, hey man, I just needed to bring some support from my number 1 fan. So Alex just goes on. He's awesome. Like, that is not fair. This is not okay. He's talking to the camera like, what is this? Is he allowed to do that? Very first gate of the next heat, boom, he obliterates his drone. And I should have won it. I made a mistake and lost the heat. But it was absolutely phenomenal. So just kind of finding awesome. What sort of little gamesmanship kinds of things can we play to kind of just get inside each other's heads. And I think that was one of the strengths that I brought to the drone racing league.
That's for sure. That's awesome. That's great. That's great. Let's see. You guys want to give a shout out to our racers this weekend? Give them any tips, advice, anything like that?
Jacob, go ahead.
I would just say, see, I'm a guy with need for speed, and I don't mind crashing my drones. So I'd say grip it and rip it, especially tiny whoops, man. Have fun. Most importantly, have fun with tiny whoops, Yeah. So, and especially I saw that location you guys have. I wish so bad I could make it down for this because location. It looks awesome.
Yeah. Look, and Nurk, you could be taking this awesome.
Look at those.
Look at
this award.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Here's our one for our filmmakers. It's pretty sweet too.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna get that one, so it's fine.
Oh man.
Oh, I can't share my screen. I've got a picture of the photo that I could share to.
Oh, funny.
Or here, I'll make it my background. While I'm talking about how to race. So yeah, especially with tiny whip racing, like what's gonna end up costing you the most time is mistakes, right? So because it's such a small drone with a lot of little things that could go wrong, things that you could bump into, if you slow it down a little bit and focus on not crashing and making it through obstacles as fast as you can. Here you go. That's me with Kathy Vanover. This is what I showed to Alex on our race. She's wonderful, by the way. Like before Alex was on the show, she she told me that I was her favorite pilot. So
That's
and
great.
Alex knew that, so I definitely played it up a little bit on that. But
Nice.
but yeah, so I'd say focus on that consistency, focus on just getting, like, just staying the course, and don't worry about, don't make mistakes that you have to go back and circle back. Just focus in, get it done, and have fun. I mean, that's what this is all about in the first place, right? Is, and I know that personally, when I'm having the most fun is when I do the best, right? It's when I get stressed out and I get focused and I get angry and I'm like, this is not the rules, this is not how this. It's way more fun, or I'm way more successful when I'm enjoying it, so just focus on that mentality.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Guys, I think that's all the big questions I have. You guys want to add anything else? Anything exciting going on or anything like that? Good.
From our side here over at AirVūz, we're just super excited for this. It's always cool seeing a first of anything, but this definitely has some legs. We see festivals from all around the world, and we are lucky to take part in a lot of them. But this one, you've got some real talent in this first year of it, and you don't always see that. So it's we're super stoked for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah,
We appreciate you guys' involvement. Go ahead, Nurk.
I was just gonna say, I'm really excited to be a part of Thunderbird Drone Film Festival. I'm so glad that I got to come be a part of this panel, and everybody that's listening, get out there, get shots, make things, and submit yours for the festival 2022.
Great. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.